forgot to change this. Of course I did. Give me 1 second. Where is it? Titles. Properties. That should be 9 now. Oops. Back.
89.
Yeah, I wish. Okay. All right. There we go. Finally. God, Zooks, get a long vacation from this and my mind goes blank. Anyway, it's season 7, episode 9. So we're still at the beginning of the year. Happy Easter, everyone who celebrated Easter. Happy Passover for those of you who celebrated Passover. Happy Zombie Day for all of you who do not celebrate either of those. Okay.
And happy men's championship tonight, 9 o'clock, UConn and Michigan.
Does that mean I have a hard stop at 9 o'clock?
I have a hard stop. You can keep going as long as you want.
I taped it, so.
You're taping it, yeah?
Oh, I can't tape sport. No, I have to watch it live.
Yeah. You gotta live the moment. You gotta live.
I just started from the beginning and run it through like I was just watching it.
Time traveling. Okay.
Be like my wife.
Yeah, there you go. Before we start, I don't have any updates or anything. I don't know. Bill, do you have any updates? Anything going on your neck of the woods yet?
Oh, I sort of. Yeah.
One of those. Yeah, I gotcha.
It has nothing to do with photography. I changed my kitchen and I'm rearranging things and
Yeah. I'm there too. As you guys, I've mentioned before, my wife and I are moving in with our daughter in the in-law apartment, and I've been working on that. The floors are all done. The wall paints are all done. I would have had a door put in, but unfortunately, I asked the son-in-law to pick up a door, and he misunderstood the size of the door that I needed. So that's on hold until we get a new door. And then we start moving furniture in very shortly. So Diane's excited.
I've been doing some photojournalism.
Okay.
So we'll send it to you in a private email, though.
All right. Okay. We got Mark all the way from Ohio joining us. Welcome, Brian, Bob, Bill. Wow, a lot of bees. Okay.
Hello.
Howdy. Okay, so as far as activities go, now that the weather is warming up, I do plan on setting up some little workshops, probably in around the Bristol area, since the wife and I are going to be moving up in that area. I might as well start looking around, scoping it out, and getting used to the friggin' geography around there.
There's one park I can show you, Doc.
Okay, cool. Just to let you know, one of the first things I want to do is get one of the little photo hunts with the cards.
Okay.
My little Snap Happy photo hunt. I want to get one of those in the books. So any location that you can recommend, you've played the game before, so you understand it. So anything that has a lot of different types of photography available within a short, span of walking distance, that'd be great.
Hey, Doc, write this down, please.
Oh, hold on.
Big park.
Let me get a piece of paper. What is it?
And it has some nice stone architecture there too. It's called Rockwell Park. That's one word. Rockwell Park in Bristol.
Okay. Cool. The other place that I really, really like is Dr. Jafrida Park.
It's very good.
It's very pretty. And what's nice about it is that there's a ton to photograph. You can do a little bit of landscape work there. When the wildflowers are out, you can do flower photography. There's a ton of insects down by the waterfront, especially the dragonflies. They're like all over the place. As you go into the woods, I've encountered, oh my God, mushrooms after mushrooms after mushrooms up on a little hillside. And of course, if you're adventurous and want to take a hike up the other side of the mountain, you can do a few overlook scenic stuff. But anyway,
Another place that's near you, Doug, if you can write this down.
Yep.
It's called Sessions Woods.
Session. I've heard of that. Never been there. Sessions Woods.
And one more place, Rich Farm Ice Cream.
Oh, of course.
Yes. Yeah, you know it in Oxford. This is in Bristol.
Oh, yeah. Is it run by the same people?
It's the same one. Same people, yeah.
Oh,
It's run by the same people.
cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Black Rock State Park. Down.
Okay. All right.
Another place.
Yeah, we'll chat later. I'll pick your brain. So what I figured today, Diane and I went up to the apartment and worked on it over the weekend, and there were daffodils galore everywhere. Okay, so it's like, maybe I'll do something with flowers. I didn't get a chance to photograph too many daffodils, and I figure, you know what? Let's just do a general flowers, some artistic Photoshop work with flowers. So that's what I like to do today. We're going to play around with a few different techniques, some texture blends, some working with patterns, which we've touched on in the past, and a lot of masking and curves adjustments and all that good stuff. Okay, so what I have, and let me switch over to the desktop. I picked 3 flowers. I picked this one, this one, and this one. I love my backlight stuff, my backlit flowers. So before I get into the actual lessons, I just want to say one thing in regards to taking what I teach today and then applying it moving forward. All right, because spring is here. There's going to be a ton of flowers popping up all over the place. Bill, I know you like doing some stuff with the seniors with flowers. It's a very, popular topic. And the nice thing is, there are public gardens everywhere. If you go to what is it, East Hartford or Hartford, that has the Rose Garden, Elizabeth Park. Yeah, in Hartford. You can spend all day and come out with just some gorgeous flower photos. But anyway, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people tend to approach a particular subject kind of without much planning. They go into it with the let's see what I can create attitude, which there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, because it allows you to kind of stretch your imagination, force yourself to kind of think outside of the box, and invites you to do some experimentation. All right. But the thing is, you have to put the effort to do that rather than just relying on what you already know, the tried and true, and sticking with that and not venturing farther beyond that. Okay. That's one approach. The other approach is, all right, I've learned this new technique that I want to really experiment with. But oftentimes what happens is certain techniques favor a particular style of photography or a particular look to an image. And you're going to see that here. I'm going to show you a technique that works best when you have a nice symmetrical flower and you're shooting straight into it rather than, a side profile or, something more dynamic like from underneath or backlit or anything like that. All right. So when you have a few techniques of editing and, in your Rolodex of techniques, you can take that forward into the field and say, okay, I want to play with this, this, and this. And they're going to require me to compose my images in a very specific way to facilitate that style of image. And then now you have a game plan when you go out into the field with your camera. And it says, okay, well, here's a pretty flower. I really like it. I'm going to make sure I shoot it for that technique. And then if I see, something else, I'll experiment with that. Okay. But at least you have it in the bag for that particular technique. And then you'll go around and you'll get a couple more different flowers that you can play around with. All right. Now, the reason I mentioned this is because there are photographers that are very well known for just their flower photography, and they sell art images of flowers. And if you look at it, they have a developed style. And if you look at it, part of the style is that they are presenting the flowers in a very specific format or a very specific way that favors the way they like to edit those images. Okay. So at that point, it becomes less experimental and more formulaic, which can become a problem at times if you kind of settle into the formula and not experiment. So, there's pros and cons to everything, but hopefully you're at a point where you're still experimenting and you're still, going out and finding the joy and looking for new things to photograph and new ways of presenting your photography. So anyway, that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give you some tools to play with, and it's up to you to go out and capture the images that you want. Okay. So, we're going to do a couple things with just the traditional Photoshop. So let's see. We'll move that one over. Why isn't it clicking? All right, window, arrange. Come on. Tabs, there we go. All right, so this one and this one, we're just going to use traditional Photoshop techniques. And this one, I figure we'll play around with the generative AI and play around with doing something a little bit more creative, okay? So that's what we're going to do. All right, so this one here, I took this at Booth Memorial Park, which is a little public garden down the street from where I live here in Shelton. And it's very pretty, especially around, around June when, all the roses, because it's the rose garden, all the roses are just like bursting all over the place. So I took this one dead head on. I've already gone ahead and cropped it to a square format. I just chose a square format just because. Doesn't mean that you have to stick around with a square format. So anyway, what I like to do is kind of bring out a little bit more of the beauty, okay? Because as you can see, this is kind of sort of well exposed, but there's really nothing that makes you go wow, or even, you know, you look at it and it says, okay, well, it's a flower, it's a rose, okay? I've seen, you know, lots of those. We want to make it a little more artistic, a little prettier, okay? So let's play around with some ideas. And one of the concepts that I was thinking is, let's bring the background is a little bit uninteresting, to say the least. I've already gone and cleaned the rose up. There were a lot of little spots, actually. If I zoom in here, oops. Oh, come on. Let's undo that. All right. And just use whatever spot. Oh, Control Z. There we go. Oh man, and you know what? Now, for some reason, this OBS just keeps interfering with my pen, and it looks like it's doing it again. Yep, look at that. Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and save. We're going to save this. Everything was working perfectly until I opened up OBS. So, in 1 second, I'm just going to go ahead and close this. I have them here in Lightroom, so we're just going to go ahead and where was it? This one here. Control E. Let's open that up. Relaunch Photoshop. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so now let's do a little bit of annotating. Mark loves my annotations. All right. So the first things I want to do is I want to bring attention to the main subject. Okay. Now we already have that. So on a technical aspect, bright proceeds, dark recedes. So we have a light flower against a dark background. Automatically, we are drawn into the flower by the fact that that's the brightest part of our image. Okay. So that in itself is a good step forward. So we have a good candidate as far as the image for working with what I would kind of call a low-key image, where the majority of the image is very, very dark, and we just have areas of lightness that kind of pop forward. But if we look, we see, you know, there are elements in the background that are a bit distracting, you know, these leaves. If it was a little bit prettier, or maybe a little bit more symmetrical or radial, or the leaves were arranged in a prettier way, you know, there'd be something there to play with. But because it's kind of a jumbled mess, and we have areas of lightness that are just popping forward, you know, in this area of darkness, it's a bit distracting. So what I want to do is I want to tone those down considerably. All right. The other thing is I want to really highlight more of the center of the flower rather than the edges. Again, it part of pulling the eye into the center. I want this to be the most important part of the flower. All right. So we're going to need to do a few things. The first thing that I want to do is I want to separate the flower from its background, because what I want to do is I want to be able to create a vignette on the background as well as create a vignette on the flower. Now, we could do it just by masks in in curves adjustments, but I don't want to make it too complicated with masks for myself. So I figure if I can isolate the subject from the background on two separate layers, I'm able to work independently on those. All right. So first things first, I'm going to go up here to my taskbar, my a little taskbar, and we're going to do a select subject. And the nice thing is, because the subject is very dominant on a dark field, this software is going to have absolutely no problem. You can see we got the marching ants. Okay. Once it's selected, I'm going to go ahead and Control or Command J. Control for you Windows people, Command J for you Mac people. So now I have the flower by itself and the background by itself. And of course, because the background still has the flower, you can still see it there. Okay. So now I can manipulate both layers independently. All right, so I'm just going to turn off just so you see what happens with that bottom layer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a curves adjustment layer. And as you know, curves adjustments are my favorite adjustments. Okay, and typically, what you would do with a curves adjustment layer is you would grab somewhere in the middle of the diagonal line here and start pulling it down and start darkening it up. Okay. And for this case, it works really, really well. The other thing is, depending on what it is that you want to do, actually for the background, it's not so bad. But let's go ahead and isolate the background and just bring the flower. I'm going to create another curves adjustment. Let's bring that above there. Okay. And I'm going to tell Photoshop, I just want you to target the flower. I don't want you to target the background. So we're going to clip it by this little symbol down here. Okay. And what that does, as you can see, it clips it and tells it, all right, whatever I do with this layer, it's only going to affect the layer that it's attached to, which is the one below. Okay. All right. And if I grab the center, we're going to see that it darkens it. But if you notice, what it's happening is all these little areas of lightness are still remaining. It's not darkening everything evenly. All right. And that's what happens when you just grab the center, because the center of our curves adjustment, this represents 50%. Okay. In tonality. And of course, we have 0%, which is 100% black. And then we have 100% luminosity, which is white. Okay. So because that's locked as our white point, as we get higher up towards that corner, anything that is bright in our image is going to remain relatively bright. Anything that is in the middle tones is going to start getting darker. And anything that's already black, well, it's going to stay black. Okay. And that's not what I want with this particular image. So let me reset that.
Hey, Doug,
Hey, Doug,
I have a
I have a
question
question I
Yep.
should have asked a long time ago.
Sure.
Of course, you want, it looks like you wanted to lower the mid-range, but why do you lower it like to the southeast instead of straight down? Yeah, you're doing that. Why do you do that
Oh.
instead of doing it straight down?
Habit. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. Okay. It's actually a really clever question. The direction that you pull the curve will determine the angle of that curve. Okay. So if I grab it in the center, which is our 50% gray midpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I drag it straight down, you're going to notice that the curve in the areas of shadow and black
Mm-hmm.
flatten out faster than the curve from our middle gray to light. See how this is much more subtle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what happens is if you pull straight down, you're crushing your shadows much faster than you attack any of the light tones.
Okay.
If we go the other way, all right. Actually, it's oh, yeah. If we go the other way, okay, and we go up from there, it's going to blow out your highlights.
All right.
Okay, it's going to push them higher. Okay, if we go more towards the diagonal or to the side, okay, we are able to soften that curve in the shadows.
Okay.
Okay, notice how it's not crushing. All right, the more I go up to here, all right, it doesn't start crushing until that curve is like way down here. Okay, so I can kind of sort of control to a certain extent, but if you notice, if I go down here, that's almost a straight diagonal. All right. And if I go here where that's crushed, that's still a very narrow, almost diagonal. Okay. So it's really not doing a hell of a lot. Okay. When you go to an extreme, but it'll do a lot if you're just doing slight movements. Okay. But otherwise, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just habit. Grab it, go up, go down. Okay. But what I want you to notice is that notice these light spots, these areas of light, they're still there. All right. And what I want to do is I want to lower the tonal value of the flower linearly across the board. Okay, so I want those the highlights to drop. I want the shadows to drop. I want my midpoints to drop. So in order to achieve that, I have to take my white point, which is all the way up here in the corner, right? And I'm going to start bringing that down. And as soon as I start bringing that down, you notice that all my tones start flattening out. I no longer have those bright areas remaining, okay? So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to just create a flatter darkening up to a certain point, and then I'm going to come in and darken that down in the shadow areas a little bit more, okay? So I want the overall flower to darken. And the reason I want it is because I want to create a vignette without spots of highlights popping through that vignette. Okay, so that's the only reason. Okay, so let me go ahead and reset this one. All right, we'll close that off and we'll just open this one up. Okay, so in this particular case with the background, we do have some areas of brightness, but if we understand our levels of brightness, none of these bright areas of leaves are at or above middle gray, I would say. These are all very, very dark tones if we were to just isolate it. All right. And to prove that, let me just create a blank layer. I'm just going to go ahead and let me get my brush, solid, make that a little bit, well, there. And I'm going to sample the bright area of that green, the tip of that green leaf. Okay. And that's how bright that is. Okay, and if you look at it next to the rose, it's not very bright at all. Okay, but if you look at it against the dark areas, the shadow areas of the background, that's where it pops forward. Okay, so that's a neat little trick to understand when it comes to tonality. It is very, very dependent on its neighbors. All right, that's how we create contrast, is how does it relate one value against its neighbor. The more they are farther apart from each other, the higher the contrast. Make sense? All right. So what I want to do is I want to lower the darkness of the background. Okay. And I'm not going to worry about the flower because, again, I cut it out and I isolate it on its own layer right there. Okay, so I'm going to disregard looking at the flower. I just want to look at that background. And what I want to do is I want to bring it down to the point where, you know, none of those things are really causing any kind of distraction. Okay, so I'm going to just look at it, and you know what? I think I'm just going to go really, really far down. That looks good. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to bring in the flower. Okay. And this is going to get a little tricky because what I want the flower to do is I want to make it feel like it fits in this environment. And right now, it looks strange because we have the flowers very bright against a artificially darkened background, so it looks off. It looks off. Okay. So what I want to do, we'll bring in our curves adjustment. What I want to do is I want to start lowering the luminosity of the rose And what I want to do is I want to look at the contrast edges here. I'm just looking at the edges, okay? I'm not going to worry about what the center does, okay? I just want to look at the contrast between the dark and the light until it feels, it's a feeling, it's intuition. There's no formula to this until it feels like the luminosity of the flower belongs in that dark environment, okay? And that right there feels all right, okay? It feels good. All right, so now we look at it and it says, well, that image is definitely underexposed if we were to take this out of camera. And that's exactly what it is, okay? What I've done is I've underexposed the flower artificially, because what I want to do now is with the use of a mask, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my mask is selected. I want black as my foreground color. I'm going to select a nice soft round brush, okay? One of the default brushes that comes with Photoshop. And let's make this a little bit large to about the size of the flower. And, oh, I got to make sure that I'm normal opacity, 100%, flows at 100%. Okay. And I'm just going to tap. Okay. And as soon as I start tapping in, all right, we're seeing some of that flower just come right back up. And now all of a sudden, we have something that really becomes a lot more striking, right? A lot more striking than this by itself. From here to here. So here we have technically correct, all right, where our eye is being drawn to the subject, but there's enough luminosity in the corners and in the background that it pulls our eye off in those directions. So while this is technically correct, this is more artistically correct. Okay. And what I can do now is I can say, all right, I'm going to create another curves adjustment. And what I want to do is I want to bring the luminosity up just a touch. Okay. I'm going to the curve and I'm going to invert it. Okay. And with my brush, I'm going to make my brush smaller. All right. And now I'm going to reverse it so that white is my foreground color because I've inverted the mask. Okay. And I'm just going to drop in a touch of lightness. So, matter of fact, what I might want to do is just bring that back down and just bring the brightness up this way. There we go. So just a touch. Actually, no, I kind of like it a little bit more open. Yeah. Maybe just add a little bit of contrast, brings some of those shadows back in. All right. So there we go. Okay. Everybody with me so far? So all I've done is I manipulated the light to bring it back in. All right. Once I bring the light back in, now we want to take another look at our edges. Okay. Because now our edges are starting to look a little, too bright. Okay. Now, I could go ahead and say, well, you know, that's an easy fix. We just darken up the edges a little bit more. But I don't really want to start creating too high of a contrast. All right. So what I want to do now is I'm going to come back down to the curves adjustment for my background. That's this one here. Okay. And I'm going to select a soft round pressure opacity. Okay. Now I can use this because I'm using a pen tablet or a tablet with a pen that allows me to have pressure gradient. You know, the harder I press on the stylus, the brighter it gets. All right. If you don't, actually, you know what? Let's just do it the regular way. I'll keep to the soft round. And what I want to do is I want to bring my opacity down to about 30%. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to bring a little bit of light just around the edges so that it creates kind of a natural vignette to my background. Okay. Now, we could do it the same way we did the flower. You know, I just make my brush bigger and then dab, make sure black is your foreground color. Dab there, you know. But the problem is I really don't have too much control because the brush is so large that the transition is going to be very, 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 you know, it's going to be a minor change as it gets out to the edges of the brush. Okay. So if we bring this back in, you can see I really don't have much control, and I'm actually starting to get too much into the corners. All right. I want this transition between the edge and the corners to be a little bit tighter, if that made sense. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reset my background. I'm going to make my brush smaller. Okay. And because it's at about 30%, I can go ahead and I'm just going to trace around the outside. Okay. And every time I make a pass, it's going to make it a little bit brighter. Okay. And you can see it right here. Okay. And what's nice about that is I can say, okay, well, you know, there's these areas of darkness here that I want to see if I can maybe pull forward here. Not necessarily the tip of that leaf there. As a matter of fact, if that's going a little bit too bright, all I have to do is switch my foreground to background color. X will toggle it. All right. So we see it here. If I hit the X, all right, will it do it while I'm displaying this? No, of course not. Okay. Oh, yeah, it does. Okay. X switches from black as my foreground color, hit the X, white as my foreground color. And now I can go ahead and just touch down the brightness of that leaf. Hit X again, switches back to black, and I'm able to go there. Now, if I want some of that black to pop forward, all I got to do is now raise my shadow area on the curve. Okay. All right. Okay. And that's before and after, before and after. Or actually, you can even do it like this. Before and after. All right, just bringing back some of that brightness just around the flower. All right, because now we have context for the flower. It's no longer floating in a sea of black. There's actually something on the edges to pull in on. Okay, everybody understand that? Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. Okay. Then from here, you know, we can play around and we can say, okay, can we add a texture? All right. Now, last month we played around with creating, finding textures on places like Unsplash and PX here and Pexels and things like that. So I have a few already in my library. Okay. And as a matter of fact, if you decide that you want to start playing around with textures and patterns, create a little section in your Lightroom specifically for that. You can do it one of a couple ways. Create a folder that you dump them all into, which is kind of what I did. But also, as you shoot for texture, you can use a keyword, a specific keyword that will allow you to create a smart, where is it? Here we go. A smart collection. Okay. So if we look at these, I have here, I've used the term hashtag art texture. All right. I use hashtag texture as a generic catch-all, but these specific ones here, these are art textures. Okay. So I use them for when I want to do like digital painting and things like that. So these are ones that mimic, you know, watercolor papers, natural papers, wrinkled papers, recycled papers, all right? Linen textured papers, things like this, okay? So the nice thing is you can take this, which is, you know, a good size. I can go ahead and edit this in Photoshop, all right? Click on the layer, drag it over to the tab, all right? Shift, drop. It's going to say it's different bit rate. That's okay. So hit yes, okay. I'm going to go ahead and size this up. Size this down. And at this point, we can play around with blend modes, okay? Darken, multiply, there we go. That looks pretty good. We can see the texture on the flower. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me go zoom in. See the texture? Okay. All right. And because we're using a multiply blend mode, it's going to make it a little bit not as noticeable in the dark areas. Okay. So it only really shows up where the luminosity is, you know, a little on the brighter side. All right. Any questions about this? It's fairly simple, but you can see that it works well with flowers that are round because it really brings you in. Now, I did it in a square format with the flower in the center. You can do the same thing if it's off center, if you like playing around with the rule of thirds and going off to, you know, one of the PowerPoints in either a horizontal or a vertical format. It still works, all right? But it works best with flowers that are fairly round in shape and fairly dense with the petals, okay? Any questions so far on this technique?
No. No.
Yes,
Okay.
Doc,
Yeah.
that thing on, let me see, I'm trying to see what the name of it is. Is that curves 2? Or
Oh.
like, no, curves
Yep.
1. The second one
All
from
right.
the bottom. So is that
Yep.
the one you were doing to get the glow from the background effect? You said meant at the top of the hour
Yes.
when we started, you said. Okay.
Yeah, so here, let me rename this. This is background vignette. Okay. So what that does is it just darkens the corners. Okay. This curve, all right, this curve here, or actually this one should be attached there. This one is the flower vignette. All right, and this one here, this is just that little bit of, we'll call that a center pop. It just pops the center forward a little bit more. All right, so hopefully that's
Okay.
helps better.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so in essence, we have 2 zones. All right, we'll group 1 and group 2, and this is our texture. Okay, so group 1 is our background, group 2 is our flower. All right, and actually there you can see that's the effect the ring is giving. All right. And I only did a ring because I'm only concerned about what's showing around the edges of the flower. I don't care about all this in the center. So I'm not going to spend extra time filling this in because it's never going to be visible. All right. So I hope that clears it up a little bit. Okay. All right. And then actually we can, if we wanted to, we can call this background. And we can call this subject. Okay. And of course the texture over everything. Any other questions? All right. So this one here kind of relies on the really, really dark tones to make that flower pop forward. Okay. All right. Do we need this? We'll close it. Okay. Let's go back to this one here. Go ahead, edit in Photoshop. Okay. Now I've already done a step. I've isolated the flower just because, just to save time. Okay. It's the same process as previously. The only thing I took a little time because what ended up happening is these sharp corners here, the AI had a hard time with it and it kind of left a little V shape of background in there. So all I did is I cleaned it up. Okay, that's pretty much all I did. The other thing I did is I went around and I, cleaned up some of the spots on the flowers just to make it look a little prettier. Okay. All right. So in this particular case, let me bring this and slide this over. All right. We have a flower that is very, very bright against a relatively bright background. And what I want to do is I want to do something similar, but I want to kind of create the way I looked at this is I wanted to kind of create a glowing effect around the principal daisy. All right. So what makes something glow is that or something glow as if it's got its own eternal illumination is by being able to see the effect of that glow in two ways. One, because it's hitting something in the atmosphere that is reflecting that light within the small vicinity of where the light is being emitted. And secondly, it is contrasting against something that is darker. All right, because it's light. In order to see light, we need to have it contrast against dark. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give this flower kind of a feeling like it's got a little bit of an inner glow without really blowing it out as if it's being lit. Okay. All right. So like I said, I got a jump start. I isolated the flower. All right. So let's just call this our subject. Oops, subject. All right. And what I want to do is I want to create a copy of it. So Control or Command J makes a copy. All right. And what I want to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay. And this one is a little tricky because what's going to create the glow is kind of like a little bit of a blurring of the edges of the flower. Okay. As the edges of the flower, let me zoom in here. Oh, cancel. As the edges of the flower actually there's already a bit of a glow. Oh, I know why. Because I softened my background up a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to filter, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Okay. And now the thing is, we don't know how much. Now, I could guess, you know, say, let's do 20%, or a radius of 20 pixels. I'm gonna hit OK. All right. And I'm going to drop it behind our subject. Okay. And now we see that there's a bit of a halo. All right. Now I can say, all right, is that enough of a glow? So if we zoom out, is that enough of a glow? Yeah, it's not too bad, but it could be more. All right. So too much back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to scrap it, create a duplicate. All right. And this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, convert to smart object. Okay. Convert to smart object. Now, when I apply that Gaussian filter, okay, you'll notice that it has created a kind of like a sub-layer, smart filter, Gaussian blur, okay? And I can turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, all right, to see the effect, all right? And just to gauge, for now, just to gauge how much of an effect it's causing, all right, I'm going to drop it behind the flower, all right? And you can see 20 pixels isn't really doing much. But the nice thing is I can double click on this Gaussian blur, and it's going to bring up my dialog. Let's go to 50, say okay. All right, turn it off, turn it on. Okay, now that one's a little bit more noticeable, okay? All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it back above, okay? And the reason I bring it above is because now what I wanna do is I actually here, before I do that, if we look very closely, you'll notice what? There's a dark shadow around us, okay? And that's because when I cut out the flower, I didn't quite cut out enough of that background, okay? So if we place the blur above it, it hides that edge, but it also hides everything else, okay? So we can use masks, okay? We can use masks. Where's my brush? Soft round brush. Bring it down. Go on the mask. Actually, I'm going to go and create a mask here. All right, black is my foreground color, and I can start bringing, let's bring the opacity back up. All right, and as long as I stay away from those edges, all right, it's going to make it look like it's got a bit of a glow. All right, kind of an Orton effect, if you're familiar with that. All right. So now if we turn that off and on, we can see that our flower has that nice glow to it. Okay. All right. Now, that's if we, oop, make sure your mask is selected. All right. That's if we want to mask out the flower from the glow. Okay. What's another way of doing it? Okay. Let's get rid of that mask. I'm going to drop the glow below the subject. Okay. I'm going to control or command. Then if you click on your subject here, all right, it's going to create a mask. I'm sorry. It's going to create a selection. All right, because the flower is by itself, right? Once I have that, if I click on the mask icon here all the way at the bottom, it's going to create a mask, all right, for the background. So that mask is removing the background, okay? From here, if I want to control the edges, all right, so just so you understand, okay, this area out here is now masked, okay? This one here in the center is unmasked. Oh, oops. unmasked. Okay? Just so you understand. So what I want to do is I want to take the mask and I want to encroach it into the edges. Make sense? That's what I want to do. All right. So if we double tap on our mask, double click on it, it's going to bring us into our mask, our masking tool. Okay. And let's see, let's show edges, show original. Let's go to black on white. No, on white. There we go. That should show us pretty well. All right, we have several tools available: smooth, feather, contrast, and shift edge. Okay. Now, I'll confess I don't use this often enough, so I never remember which direction to bring this friggin' stupid slider in. All right. So, like any sliders, bring it to the extreme, see what it does. Well, it didn't do anything to that edge, so it means that it probably went to the outside. Okay. So I'm going to shift it to the other side. And it didn't do anything. Okay. Why? Well, that shift edge only works when you've applied a bit of a feather a little bit of a feather. Okay. So we need to feather the edge because right now, let me switch here. Okay. Right now we have a very hard edge. Okay. So if it's going to shift, it's not going to shift very much. Okay. But however, once we have a bit of a feather to it, let me give it, some feather here. All right. Something's going on here. There we go. Feather. There we go. There we go. Okay. Once we have a little bit of a feather, okay, we can then contrast and then we can bring that in. All right. So we're going to shift our view to on white. Bring that edge back. Okay. As soon as we get a little bit of a feathered edge, a little contrast, we bring it in. Now we can see how it's getting rid of that dark edge, correct? Everybody see that? Okay. Now you got to be careful you don't go too far, all right? Because you notice all these areas where there's a cusp. Now all of a sudden, it gets really, really rounded out. So you have to be careful. You want to bring it in to just gets that dark edge, okay? All right. We're going to hit OK. And at that point, if you need to, we can take a hard round brush. Black is our foreground color, and we can just kind of touch up some of those edges if need be. The other thing you can do is you can go to your, where is it? Oh, here it is. Your smudge tool. Okay. You have to be careful with this, with this one. It can be very easily overdone. All right. We're going to bring it to a very, very low strength. Okay. And I got a 1%. Let's try about 10%. All right. And then very, very, very carefully just start pushing that edge in. Let's see if I can find, oh, here we go. Bring it in. All right, and see how that darkness just disappeared there? We'll do it here. Okay, bring it in, bring it in. What we're doing is we're just pushing the pixels in our mask. Okay. And we're just manipulating them down into the corners. So you can, this is a neat little way of cleaning up your masks, especially in these little corners here, without worrying about actually painting them in. Okay. Without taking a brush and painting them in. All right. And just make your size of the brush appropriate to what you're working with. Any questions about this technique? I think this is a new technique for you guys. I don't cover this one as often. All right. But it allows you to get into these like nooks and crannies really, really nicely. Okay, good. There we go. All right. So now we are using the mask. All right. To get rid of that dark edge, and that glow sits behind the flower. All right, so it doesn't really mess too much with the edges. Okay, if you want a little bit of softness around the edges and you want it to be controllable, guess what? We have that ability here in our properties. All right, the properties. If you don't see the properties, just go Window. All right, properties. Okay, and it'll pop it out. Okay, and then here you have a feather. Now, the difference between this feather and the feather when you double clicked is this one is temporary. This one is temporary. It also affects the entire mask. All right, so if we look at the mask here, I can modify this at any time. All right, and it's not permanent. It's a temporary feather. Okay, so if I say, oh, it's too much, I can come here and I can back it out. Okay, so properties, make sure you're on your mask. There we go. Okay, any questions on that so far? Okay, so we've added our glow. We made our flower look nice and glowy. All right, so what we're going to do, let me go subject, group that. That'll be our subject group. Let's work on our background. Okay, and just like the previous one, curves adjustment. Okay, and in this case, I don't want to kill any of the highlights too much. Okay, maybe these down here a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So what we're gonna do is just gonna bring this down. Okay. Or bring it down this way. Which way? See, that looks a little kind of funky. Maybe a little combination of the two. Okay. That's not too bad, I suppose. Okay. I don't want to go too dark. I just want to create, there we go. All right. Now, let's go back to our glow. All right. The glow that I have here is set to normal. So meaning whatever the color was, the flower, when it got blurred out, that's the color that is being applied. All right. I can play around and we can see, okay, will other blend modes work better? So, oh, I kind of like that screen mode. Okay. All right. So now with this, with a little bit of more brightness in the glow, all right, I can probably bring that background down a little bit more. Make sense? Okay, so at this point, I'm looking for a nice balance. Okay. And because we have a mask attached to this, what I want to do is there's these two flowers in the background, one here and one here, left and right. I don't want those to completely disappear. So we're going to come to our brush. All right. Select our brush, black as our foreground color. Okay. And I want to make sure it's a nice soft round brush. Okay. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. All right. And again, if you want, you can bring your opacity down. And I'm just going to touch those up. All right. That looks pretty good. Okay. That's not too bad. All right. One more thing. I'm going to add a little bit of vignette. I want to darken these corners down, especially this corner right here. Kind of, it pops a little bit too much. Okay. So another curves adjustment. We're going to bring that top right corner. We're going to bring it down because we want a linear darkening, not a curved darkening. All right. Bring our brush, soft round brush. I'm going to make it nice and large. All right. This time we're going to go opacity at 100%. And I'm just going to tap the center. Let's make this brush a little bit smaller. Tap on those flowers. I want to bring those flowers forward. Okay. Off, on, off, on. Okay. It just kind of softened those corners up a little bit. All right. Any questions on, let's bring that up a little bit. Any questions about this one?
No.
All right. So it's very similar to what we did. We just added another element to it, and we controlled the contrast between the subject and the background so it's not as extreme. Okay. So just to show you, that's this one, that's this one, this one, and this one. All right. Should we add texture to it? Popular vote, yes, no? Anybody?
We should try it, but I better flash with the glow.
Okay. Good call. Good call. Let's find out, shall we? All right. Let's go here to our art textures. You know what? I have a folder of textures. Let's try something different. Let's try nothing too extreme. I'm kind of liking this one here. Let's see what this one looks like. Edit in Photoshop. Okay. It's kind of like a cracked dark concrete. All right. Shift, drop, say yes. We're going to actually go ahead and we'll stretch this out. Okay. We're going to switch from normal and let's multiply. Ooh, that's looking a little bit harsh. Overlay. Ooh, that's not too bad. Okay.
I like that.
I kind of like that, right? All right,
Yeah.
let's add a
Do me a
mask.
favor, hey, Duck,
Yo,
just for ha-has, why don't you play with the opacity just to see?
okay. Yeah, if you play with the opacity, it's got to be very slight.
Okay.
What I was going to do is, yeah, that actually doesn't look too bad. Look at that. Whoa, look at that nice texture. Whoa, that is sweet. All right. And then what you can do is, again, with a soft round brush, all right, we're going to bring the opacity down about 10%. 10%. Black is a foreground color, and I'm just going to start very slowly painting in the center. I don't want to kill the texture, but you can see just a little softening of the texture. Okay. And that looks pretty good. I kind of like that. I dig it. All right. That was unexpected. I did not plan for that one. Okay. Any questions on this technique?
No.
Okay. Now, this has all been done with traditional Photoshop tools. And as you can see, they've all been pretty much curves adjustment layers with masks. Okay. That's all right. We'll call this our background. Okay. And yeah, that looks pretty cool. All right. So if we look here, very subtle, very subtle. All right. All right, the final one, we can get rid of this one. The final one, we're going to switch it up. Let's go to collections, today's class. This one right here. Open it up in Photoshop. Okay. This one, what I want to do is we're going to play around with AI, the generative. Oh, my microphone's in the way. The generative AI that's built into Photoshop, which is Firefly. Okay. And now, previously, we used Photoshop tools to kind of mimic with the art history brush tool to kind of mimic oil painting. And we tried recreating something that looks like a watercolor painting, and you saw that it kind of sort of misses the mark a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use generative AI to create a watercolor effect. All right. Now, this one's a little tricky. There's a few moving parts that are difficult to understand. I'm going to try my best to explain it, but there are a ton of tutorials on how to do this online. So if you need clarification, just look up generative AI watercolor in Photoshop, and they'll all pop up. Okay. All right. When we have our subject or our layer selected, right, we have our context sensitive bar here that has very specific buttons preloaded into it. Okay. And these buttons are going to change depending on what you are doing with Photoshop at any given time. So that's why this is a context sensitive toolbar. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to tell Photoshop that we're going to use Firefly to convert this photo into something that resembles a watercolor painting. All right. Now, currently, this image is large, 5,000 by 3,000 pixels. Okay. It's a little large. As you understand, there are certain limitations with the generative AI, and one of those, you're limited to about 2,000 pixels. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the image size down. I'm going to make sure percentage is selected here, and I'm going to just type in 50%. And I'm going to hit OK. Okay. And that is now our new working size here. Okay. It's just going to make it a little bit easier for the AI, and when the AI brings the generated version, it doesn't have to stretch it out to the full canvas. That's all we're prepping for. Okay. All right. Now, in the past, whenever I wanted to convert something to a painting, whether it's watercolor or oil, I often tend to use a bit of a blur filter to knock down some of the high frequency detail in an image. In this case, we don't need to worry about that because the AI is going to be replacing everything with made up pixels. All right. So we don't need to do any kind of prep work in regards to that. All right. But what we need to do is we need to create a selection for the AI tool to access. All right. So here's what you would normally think you would do. All right. Control Option A to select everything. All right. And as soon as you select everything, you're going to notice that the context bar here changes to where it says generative fill. Okay. So if I deselect, you can see it says select subject. Okay. And remove background. As soon as I do Control A, okay, it gives me this generative fill. All right. So now if I click on that, it allows me to enter a prompt. Okay. So let's just say watercolor painting. Okay. And we hit enter and we wait. It does it's saying out in the cloud. You have to make sure you have your internet connection. And after a few seconds, it's going to come back and it's going to give us a drum roll maestro. Drum roll maestro. Come on. There we go. A watercolor painting. Woohoo!
Yay!
Wow.
This one's a different one. All right. And this one. What the heck? It doesn't look anything like that flower. All right. And that's because the generative AI doesn't really know what the heck it's looking at. Okay. We have to give it a a selection. It's not a regular selection. All right. And this is what I mean by it's a little tricky. Okay. All right. Because right now it's just saying, hey, it's the user is asking me to create a new layer. All right. That looks like a watercolor painting. And this is what it returns. And in effect, it has given me exactly what the prompt says. Okay. So how do we get around this? Well, what we need to do is we need to use a quick mask tool, the quick mask tool, okay, to make a selection. Okay. So you can either press the letter Q or you can toggle, let's see, there we go. Toggle this little icon here with the picture with the marching ant circle, okay? As soon as you toggle that, all right, you're gonna notice that it's going to enter quick mask mode, all right? And you're gonna see two indicators, all right? One, the icon changes here, but more importantly, you're gonna see that the background of your layer, the background on the layers box here changes color. Okay. Now, in my case, it's green because I purposely set that to a green color. Okay. Oh, cancel. But we can and well, actually, I'll show you. All right. So we have our quick mask selected. Okay. We are in quick mask mode. Okay. And this is why I mean it gets tricky because it's hard to follow. It's hard to understand what state your image is because the only real thing that changes is that little icon and the color of that background. Okay. Now, it's not really selecting anything here. All right. Now what we can do is normally we would make a selection and it would, we paint on it. And as we paint, that becomes our selection. But we're going to get a little bit more technical because I don't want to select just a portion of the image. I want to select the entirety of the image. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use edit, fill, okay, color. All right, and it's going to bring up our color dialog box. Now this is where it gets a little bit more convoluted. What we're telling Photoshop to do is to use a particular shade of gray to fill the mask in. And the mask is going to fill 100% of our image from corner to corner to corner to corner. Okay? We're not selecting a specific item. We're selecting the entire image. All right. And we're going to tell it how intense of that that shade of gray. Okay. Now, if you recall, a regular mask on a layer, you can control how dense, how much of that mask affects the underlying layers by how dark or how light that mask is. Okay. So remember previously with the other flowers, I turned the opacity down on the brush so that I was building up darker and darker and darker and darker every time I made a pass with the brush. Okay. As I got darker and darker and darker, more of the effect was coming through. Everybody understands this? The more you go to black, the more transparent that mask is, the more you're allowing the whatever's underneath or whatever the effect is to come through. Okay? So now we're looking at it as far as opacity. If I were to fill this in with 100% black, you would see 100% of the image. Because 100% black is 100% transparent. It allows you to see 100% of the photo. If I paint it with 50% black, I only see 50% of the image, the opacity, come through that mask. If I put 20% 20% gray, all right, so it's a very, very light gray, it doesn't show me 20% of the image, okay, because we got 20% black, okay, it's going to show me 80% of the image. All right, so this is where it gets a little weird, okay, because we're putting a percentage of black that is removing a certain percentage of the image, okay? So if we remove 20% from 100% of the image, all right, we're going to hide 20% of it, what's going to come through? 80% of the image. Follow? Okay. All right. So, the more we go to black, okay, all right. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at, we have hue at 0, saturation at 0, and brightness. That's the tonality of our mask, okay? We're going to bring that down to, well, we'll start it off at 50%, okay? We'll start it off at 50%. So 50% of the image is going to come through. That 50% of the image is going to affect the AI. It's going to see 50% of that image and say, oh, I need about 50% of influence of that image into what I do with the AI. Okay? If I put 20 here, all right, notice how it's getting darker and darker. Okay? That 20% blackness is allowing 80% of the image to come through. All right? All right. We're going to start off at 50%. Let me just put in 50. Hit OK. OK. Now, I have it set to green. Just, it's my preference. By default, it's going to be that kind of like neon red rubylith color. All right. But it's the same thing. Okay. And then we're going to hit Q to come out of the quick mask. All right. And because you can't see it, all right, but we do have a selection, all right, and we can kind of sort of tell because now it says generative fill instead of select subject, okay, or remove background, okay. And we're going to type in, once again, watercolor painting. paint. Oh, I can spell. Painting. Okay. And we shall see something, right? Hopefully. We let it do its thing, let it do its thing, let it do its thing. And a few seconds. Getting to the end. Drum roll, please. And watercolor painting of our rose. What the heck? What happened? All right. Now, I'll have to admit, I've done this before. This was supposed to have worked. And it threw me for a loop as to why it didn't work. Okay? So if you've ever encountered this technique before and you've used it in the past and it's worked, it's not going to work anymore. And it took me some investigating as to why it didn't work. And I found the culprit. The culprit is right here. The latest version of Firefly, they have this right up here, Firefly Fill and Expand, which is typically the default when you go into the generative AI part of this, okay? So if this is checked, this technique will not work. You have to drop down one generation to the Firefly image 3. Okay? Firefly image 3. All right, so let's get rid of this. All right. See, we are back to select subject, so we've got to do it again. All right. With our layer selected, Q or the little quick mask symbol opens up the quick mask. We're going to edit, fill. All right. If you want to start off with 50%, there's already a 50% gray here. You don't have to go to the color and select 50%, but we're not going to stay at 50%. We're going to start off at 50%. I just want you to show the differences. Okay. So we're going to set okay. Okay. We have our selection. Q to bring us out. And now we have the generative fill. Once again, watercolor painting. Watercolor painting. Hit enter. We let it do its thing. Process. Adobe's getting sick and tired of me sending the same photo and the same command up to them all the time, right? And of course, this burns through credits. All right. Drum roll. And now, whoa, what the heck happened? I did something wrong. What the heck did I do? Oh, it's still, see, I didn't double check it. Damn it. Sorry about that, guys. Q, edit, fill, 50%, we'll go Q, make sure that is set to Firefly 3, image 3, the earlier watercolor painting. Watercolor painting, there we go. Paste to double check. There we go. And we have our watercolor flower. Okay. And because it's using the Firefly model, it's going to give us 3 variations. Okay. Now at 50%, you can see that the outline kind of sort of matches, right? The outline's there, but the internal part of the flower changes considerably, okay? And that's what that 50% influence does, okay? This one probably one of the better ones, all right? But even that, it simplified the internal part of that flower. And it did some craziness around the outside for some reason, okay? So you have 3 iterations to choose from. I kind of like that one. All right, I'm going to turn that off. Going to come back to the original. Okay. Quick mask, edit, fill. And this time, instead of 50%, I'm going to go to 20%, which is going to allow 80% of that image influence. Okay. Hit OK. OK. Get out of quick mask, generative fill. Make sure that's still on the previous watercolor painting. All right. And you can type in oil painting, pencil sketch, or pen drawing. And it's going to give you those variations of it. Okay, I'm just using watercolor as an example. Everybody with me still? Okay. And, oh, finished up very quickly. All right, and you can see that at 80% influence, it retained the internal structure of that flower pretty darn good. All right, and we have a watercolor interpretation. All right, and you can pick whichever, I kind of like that one. You can pick whichever variation of the flower you like. Oh, I kind of like that one too. That one, or that one. That one, or that one. I think I still like the first one, okay? Now, here's the nice little trick. And one of the reasons why I did a couple of them, all right? This is the previous one, okay? 1, 2, oh. 1, 2, 3. That one, I kind of, all right. The background is a lot more simplified. Okay, it's a lot more simplified. So now what we can do is we can take, we can take this rose, place it on this background. Make sense? All right. So this is what we're going to do. All right. I'm going to get one of these watercolor papers, art textures. All right, which one? This one? Yeah, I'll do this one. Control E to open it up in Photoshop. Click and drag over, shift and drop. Say yes. Okay. And there it is. I'm going to go ahead and size this down. All right. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to drop it down below. I want you to notice I dropped it down below my 2 versions that I AI generated, but above my original. Okay. So that's going to become my backdrop. Okay. So I'm going to use this one for my background. Let's just go ahead and change that to background. And this one here is going to be the flower. I'm going to keep that for the flower. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to reverse order. And now if I wanted to make it really give that, I painted it with watercolor brush. I'm going to turn this off for a second. I'm going to create a new blank layer. If you have some watercolor brushes, all right, opacity, let's go opacity, all right. You can use that if you want, okay. There are plenty of brushes out there. You can download them. Let's see, I got 20 large watercolor brushes. Where's the nice big brushes? Oh, here we go. Things like that, okay? Delete. So you can use watercolor brushes, you know, set them up accordingly. I'm not going to get this technical. I'm just going to use one of the ones that I have that I kind of use just for texture. Okay, so let's clear that. And where is it? Oh, here it is. Watercolor 1, watercolor 2, watercolor 3. All right, and that's not the one. That's not the, where is it? Yeah, this one here. Okay. All right, let's get rid of that layer. I'm going to give this brush setting, shape dynamics. I'm going to give it an angle jitter. So every time I make an impression, it's going to rotate my brush. And let's give it a little bit of a size jitter. Okay. All right. So we're going to use this for a background. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that your background is selected, and we're going to invert it. Okay, so Control or Command I, or you can just use this little invert button and it inverts it. Now, you want white as your background color. So make sure white is your background color. I'm going to keep it at 100% opacity, 100% flow. And I'm just going to punch in, just bring in my background. Okay. And if I want X, make black my foreground color, I can clean up my edges here if I want to. There we go. That's pretty much all I need here. Okay. I'm going to bring in my next layer. Going to do the same thing. Make sure that the layer is selected. You see the box around it. Invert it and make sure that white is your foreground color. Okay. And now I'm just going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to paint in just the flower of that second painting. Okay. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Okay. Or is there? All right. Now we can, of course, I'm going to group these two together. And if I wanted to, we can reduce the opacity a little bit. All right. But because these are opaque layers sitting on top of our textured paper, okay, I want that same texture to be applied to the pigmented areas, okay? So again, just like anything with Photoshop, there are multiple ways of doing it, all right? we can take the texture and put it on top and use a blend mode. But if you remember, well, actually, here, I'll show you, okay? If we take that and we put it above, okay, and we change the blend mode to, well, multiply, that's going to be too much, okay? And linear burn, lighten, screen, okay? Actually, here, we'll do multiply. All right. Now, because there's nothing in the background, all right, I can turn this off, okay? Right now, it's just using kind of like the transparent pixels. So what I would do in this case, I would create a solid color adjustment layer, all right, and give that a white, or maybe even kind of like a little bit of a cream color, all right, just to give it a touch of color, okay? And then now this becomes tricky, all right? If we use the multiply blend, the multiply blend takes the darker pixels of our texture and applies the dark pixels to the light pixels underneath. Make sense? So the lighter the pixels are of the texture, the more transparent they are. Okay? That's why everything that's white on our, everything that's white here becomes invisible, becomes transparent, becomes see-through as soon as I go to multiply. All right? But you can see that it actually does affect a little bit. Okay? A little bit. All right? Now, right now, I don't have anything that is like really, really dark in that underlying tone. So we're able to see the texture. Okay? But if there was anything that's really, really dark, all this multiply texture would disappear. Okay? The other one you can use is kind of like an overlay or a soft light. Okay? And you can see that that kind of targets the lights and the darks, okay, and retains the midtones, all right? So certain images work best with this blend tone, blend mode, okay? The other one that would be either lighten or screen, but that's only going to work when you have an inverse of this and you're working with dark pixels underneath, okay? But because we're working with fairly light pixels, the multiply is going to be our best bet. Just realize that the blend mode that you use is going to be heavily dependent on the underlying density of lights and darks in your image, okay? All right. Now, the other way to do it is to just, I'm going to turn this off, have a copy, make a copy so that the underlying one will be normal, all right? Normal, okay? And then here you apply your multiply, and then if that's a little bit too heavy-handed, you could either reduce the opacity, or what I prefer is going with the blend if mode. Okay, so you double click on the open area, and what we're going to do is from our current layer, the current layer, which is the texture layer, we want to turn the lighter pixels, all right, on the underlying layer, okay? Because if we do this, it's just going to remove everything from the current layer. We want the underlying light pixels to be removed from the current layer, okay? And as you can see, is the more I remove, the more of that texture is hidden from the lighter areas. All right, so I just want to remove it from the background. Then Alt or Option, we split that, okay? And we can control how much intense, how intense that texture is on the outside part, okay? While still maintaining the inner part, okay? So this is an alternative technique. Use whichever one works best with your image. In this particular case, I think just a plain multiply on a white background, okay? So white background, we'll turn that off. This one, multiply, and we'll get rid of that. That works just fine. Okay? All right, hopefully I didn't confuse you with too many options. Any questions on this one? All right, so Bill, this is something that you can play with. Brian, you've been playing around a lot with AI. Here you go.
Yeah.
Turn yourself into a watercolor
That looks good.
with a watercolor with texture. Okay, and of course, you know, if you want to really dress it up, let's create a blank layer. Let me get a brush. My brushes. Let's make that. Let's make that really small. And black is my. And of course, oops, Control Z. Let's go multiply. Yeah. And you can autograph it. Let's go over here. Yeah, why let's see. Brush. Why isn't that very dark? Oh, it's because it's not black. That's why. That's why. There we go. Ta-da! Official. All right. Any questions on any of the techniques that we used today?
No.
All right. And look at that. With plenty of time for you guys to get to the game.
Yes. We have our priorities.
You're welcome.
It looks real good. Looks real good.
Yeah.
All right. So now you have a few techniques in the bag. Mark, I know you played around with Blend If in the past, kind of how to fake texture on a wall. This is the same thing. We're faking texture on paper. All right. So,
Yeah.
okay.
It's really good to know that stuff.
Absolutely. All right, guys. That's it for today. Bill, I'll private message you for some information on to some locations, and we'll get something in the books for an actual photo outing. Okay.
Good.
Good night, folks.
All right, guys.
Everybody.
Stay safe. Don't do
No
anything I
hiding
wouldn't
scenes.
do. All right.
Thank you, Doc. Bye.
You're welcome. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.